Another article released and another appearance by two Clemson players proving just how special this Clemson defense is going to be this year.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Clemson podcast. I'm your host, John Bivens. You can find me over on X at I am John Bivens or over at the Tiger Wire on X as well. Thanks for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every single day. We are free and available to wherever you get your podcast and over on YouTube. And we are a part of the amazing Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Here on the podcast on Locked On Clemson, you're getting three things. You're getting all sports, you're getting all passion, and you're getting all of the time. Today is Friday, June 14th, and we're going to be recapping a couple different sports today. We're going to dive into PFF's their list of their top returning college football players. We're going to talk about some baseball. We got some transfers that are transferring out as the portal opened, and we're going to end it up with some special moments so far. Yesterday was a big day when it comes to Clemson alumni in the professional world. We are so grateful for all of our ads that make this show possible and everything that they do. So, PFF, which is if you're unfamiliar with PFF, they are a great platform that puts out a lot of football content. They put out a lot of lists, rankings, breakdowns of all kinds of football, especially college football. They do some NFL mocks. They do some draft. They do some good stuff over there. They have put out their college football 2024 top returning players at every single position. And as you go through their list, they highlighted about 5 players specifically at each of the different position groups. Clemson had 2 players appear on this group, which isn't surprising. We got some great players returning, but usually in years past, we've had more than 2 on this list. But with the year we had last year, with player performances, where everything's at with that, it's not really surprising that we only have 2. But the 2 that are on there, big days for them, and I think they're absolutely right. So as we go through, before we dive into the Clemson players, just to give you an idea who's on the list, their top 2 overall returning players are Georgia's quarterback Carson Beck. He's a redshirt junior, and he enters as the top returning quarterback in college football. And then they also have Tennessee's James Pierce Jr., he's coming up to be a junior. He's the first edge defender on the board, has them as number 1 as a returning defensive player. So that's their two best players in their opinion that they have returning. Some of the quarterbacks on the list is Carson Beck with Georgia, Dylan Gabriel, Oregon, Jalen Milroe, Alabama, Shadur Sanders, Colorado, and Quinn Ewers with Texas. Best running back they have is Ollie Gordon II with Oklahoma. I probably would put Amarion Hampton from North Carolina at running back, the best one. Tight ends, they have Luther Burden from Missouri. They have McMillan from Arizona. They have Tez Johnson from Oregon, and then Xavier Restrepo from Miami. So an ACC player making an appearance there. Tight end, they have tight ends. Their best returning tight end is Colston Loveland. Again, I probably would change it up. I'd probably say that Bryant Queeth over at Utah would probably be the best one. Offensive tackles, Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks from LSU and Texas. Interior offensive linemen, they have Parker Brailsford and Tate Ratledge from Alabama and Georgia. And then we get in the defensive side. The defensive side, they've got a couple players, but the first highlight that we are able to see from Clemson comes in their interior defensive lineman on that list of 5. Peter Woods makes his appearance here as the 4th best returning player for interior defensive lineman. So if you don't know about him, last year was his first year at Clemson as a freshman. He came in and he started right away. And he played really well. Last year he played the only game that he didn't put up really stats was our first game against Duke, which was that loss that we won't talk about, one of our 3 losses last year. But other than that, he's a solid player. He was one that was very solid in what he does and who he was on the field. He was very consistent. They are stating him here to have a big breakout season this coming year, and I think he's going to be well. I think he is going to be good. Last year, his stats was he played in 12 games. He only started in 2 of those, but he played in 12, appeared in a lot of them, had 26 total tackles, 13 assists, 13 solo, had 2.5 tackles for a loss, and then had 1 forced fumble, which came later in the season against Carolina when we hosted the Tar Heels and beat them. So overall, last year wasn't like he didn't light up the stat board, right? 26 tackles in 12 games. You're averaging just over 2 tackles a game. Only 1 forced fumble, no sacks, nothing like that. Only 2.5 tackles or a loss. Last year, he didn't have the best year, and a lot of Clemson fans they expected more out of him. But this year, I really think he's going to have a breakout. I think he's going to come out. He's going to make an impact. He's going to be there solid. He's only a freshman, or he's a sophomore now, so he's young. So it makes sense he didn't have that immediate impact last year. But I agree. I think he is going to be one of the best interior defensive linemen. I think he's going to have an outstanding year. So love to see him up on the board. The second player that made their list is at the linebacker position, and we've talked about it. So many platforms out there have said that Clemson has the best linebacker crew of all the FBS football. And I agree. I think our linebackers are stout. They are definitely the highlight of our program. And so number 2 on this list, they had Harold Perkins, the number 1 LSU linebacker. Number 2 was Barrett Carter from Clemson. And Barrett Carter, he's something special. He is 100% special. He is a senior coming into Clemson. He's played for 3 years. Honestly, his sophomore year was a little bit better than his junior year. We'll talk about that in a second. But overall, his career defensive stats, his first year here as a freshman, he played in 13 games, started in 1, had 16 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 pass deflection. Sophomore year, you talk about a breakout year. It was a breakout year. He played in 13 games and started all of those, had 73 tackles, 41 solo, 32 assists, 10.5 tackles for a loss, 5.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 pass deflections, and 2 interceptions. Last year, like we said, a little bit lower of a year, a little bit down of a year. Wasn't like he didn't fall off the map, but he definitely did not have as productive of a year. Played in 12 games, started in 12 of those, had 62 tackles, 37 solo, 25 assists, had 9.5 tackles for a loss, 3.5 sacks, no forced fumbles, 6 pass deflections, and 1 interception. That 1 interception came in our last game, the bowl game against Kentucky, so we were excited to see there. But yeah, so last year, he didn't have a great year, or he didn't have like the amazing year, but he definitely had a solid year. His highest tackle was against Miami, at Miami when we lost that game by 8, had 8 tackles there. His highest sacks, he had never had more than 1 sack. He had 1 at Syracuse, 1 at NC State, and 1 at South Carolina. Those pass deflections, he had 6, but they really weren't spaced throughout the year. He had 2 against North Carolina and then 4 in Kentucky. Really showed up, probably due to some players not playing, going in, just such as Jeremiah Trotter, decided not to play in that bowl game to get ready for the draft. And his 1 interception did come against Kentucky in that bowl game. So those were our 2 players that appeared in this college football the top returning players. On defensive side, some of the players that they also highlighted, we'll highlight some of them. They had James Pierce, the top returning edge defender from Tennessee. Top interior defensive lineman, Peter Woods was 4. Mason Grant from Michigan was number 1. We told you Harold Perkins was top returning linebacker. Cornerback, they had Will Johnson from Michigan and Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. And then safeties, they had Caleb Downs, Ohio State, Malachi Starks from Georgia. We thought Andrew Makuba, the transfer leaving Clemson, might appear on this list, but I'm not sure. I don't think they included transfers. They were talking about returning to their schools. So overall, seeing those 2 players on that list, love to see that for them. I'm glad they're getting the recognition. I agree. I think Peter Woods can have a breakout year. I think Barrett Carter, honestly, less competition, but he's still our linebacker crew so well. So I don't know if he's going to have an outstanding statistical year just because he's surrounded by so much talent on the defensive side. It's kind of like that no matter what sport you're in, the more stars that are around you, the less recognition you get. Think about the Yankees. Andrew Judge or Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Giancarlo Stanton, they're all 3 having amazing years. And you don't really give the recognition to one of them because as a crew, they're so much better. But you switch that up, one great player on a not so great team or not a team full of stars gets a lot more recognition. Think about the Padres a couple years ago with Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis. They were 2 stars, but the rest of the team really wasn't that great. So you highlighted a little bit more on them. It's the same with football. Clemson last year, or Clemson this year, it has a lot of stars, a lot of potential. So with all those stars and with all that talent, I don't know if these two players can get the recognition they as much. They're not going to put up as much stats because they have so much other stars around them. But either way, they are going to have great years. We're glad to see them get the recognition that they deserve. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to switch things up and talk about a little bit of baseball. So we will see you in just a moment. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That's ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Make sure you head over to ebaymotors.com for all you need for your vehicle. We're so grateful for them. So Clemson baseball ended the season very disappointingly. We've talked about it. We're going to have a recap episode with a guest coming up soon over our whole baseball season. But Clemson baseball season, it ended hard. We had a ugly performance in ACC tournament, won the regionals, won 3 games to advance out of the regionals, which was exciting. And then we got to the super regionals, and it did not have a good series, right? Did not have great. You can go watch our highlight video 2 videos ago from earlier on this week that recapping our thoughts on the super regional. But overall, our baseball season, we had a great season. Team 127 was so special, but it didn't end with a lot of success. With this baseball season being over for the majority of the team, everybody except for 8 teams, a majority of the country except for 8 teams, the transfer portal has opened. Players can now, if your team is eliminated, can enter the portal and start announcing or trying to find a different school to go to. Clemson has had 2 players enter this transfer portal. We've had a couple others that are going to say they're going to pro. We'll talk about more on another episode. But the 2 transfers that enter the portal, honestly, I'm not as worried about that as a lot of people are. Me personally, I think the guys going into the portal, starting the season, we thought they were going to have a lot more impact, but as the season went on, they really didn't. So we're going to talk about those. The 2 players that are entering the portal are Billy Barlow and then Cooper Blauser. And so we're going to dive into both those players specifically. Billy Barlow first. He was expected to be our ace. I think going into this season, he started our opening day against Xavier, pitched a good performance, really good performance. Pitched 5 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs. We won that game 14-3. That was a game that was kind of like, all right, this team's special. We really saw that off the bat, that this team's got potential. Went on that long win streak. And honestly, as the season went on, we really saw Billy Barlow kind of not be the pitcher that we thought he would. He's pitched at Clemson for 3 years. This 3rd year was definitely the year that he got the most, or was expected to get the most, but actually his freshman year, he pitched a lot more than he did this year based on performances. But like we said, that first year or that first game against Xavier, we thought he was going to be this breakout year, really good player. And then his second performance, he came out and did terrible. He started the game, pitched 2 innings, gave up 8 hits, 5 runs, all 5 earned. We went on to lose to Kennesaw State 1-18. Rough. That was his only loss of the year. But honestly, he didn't have a great year. His stats this year, he pitched he went 6-1 in 10 starts, pitched in 15 games, had a 4.28 ERA, which was his career low ERA, had 48.1 innings, gave up 50 hits, 29 runs, 23 of those were earned, had 8 bombs, the most home runs he's allowed at Clemson, 20 walks, 42 strikeouts, and then, so he hit 7 different batters, and he faced 221. That's his stats. And I know overall, it seems like he did really well, but honestly, he didn't have a great season. There was 3 different games this year that he posted a +10 ERA for the game. He lived in that middle range, which is why he finished with a 4.28. There was only 5 appearances by him that he didn't allow a run, and 2 of those weren't even a starts. So he only had he started a total of 10 games this year, and only in 3 of those did he not allow a run. He didn't face more than, or he didn't ever go more than 5 innings. He never pitched more than 5 innings. His opening game, 5 innings. Third game against Kansas State, 5 innings. The Nets game, 5 innings. Against USC Upstate, 5 innings. And USC Upstate again pitched against him twice, had 5 innings of those. That's it. Towards the end of the season, his last 5 appearances, it wasn't a starter. They brought him out of the bullpen. Pitched 4 innings against Georgia Tech, 2/3 of an inning when he allowed 3 runs there against Wake Forest. That was a rough game. I lost that 3-13. Came out of the bullpen there. Pitched to get 3 innings against Boston College. Did all right, but came out of bullpen there. Louisville pitched 1 2/3 inning, finished with a 5.4 ERA that game, allowing 2 runs. And then at Florida, he came in and faced Florida when we lost to them 10-11 in that last game of the season. He did come in there, pitched 2/3 of an inning, didn't allow a run. But overall, he did have a great year. I mean, honestly, I know we expected him to be our ace. We expected him to be so much, but honestly, with Andrew Knock coming in, him playing as good as he is as a freshman, All-American freshman, he's going to be our ace. I fully expect him to be our Friday starter next year. So Billy Barlow transferring out, it hurts at first appearance. It's like, dang, that stinks. But honestly, I don't think it hurts us as much as we think it does. With as stacked as our pitching crew is, and we're probably going to get a transfer 2 in there, get some freshmen coming in. I'm not super concerned about that. So Billy Barlow's transferring out. The second one is Cooper Blauser. He was a freshman this year. He's played at Clemson for 1 year. They brought him in, and they really expected him to truly compete for an infield starting spot. They expected him to come in and just get that starting spot. He started the first game when we won against Xavier, and he had a good thing there. He came in, had 3 at-bats, had 1 hit, and that 1 hit was a solo RBI. He had 4 total bases just in that 1 hit. This year, he did not have a multi-hit game. In fact, he only had 3 hits on the year. He came in and he expected to get a lot of playing time, but honestly, he didn't. He did not get that playing time. His performance wasn't up to par. We definitely had other players that are outperforming him, and I think that's the reason that he's decided to transfer. Overall, his stats for this year, he played in 12 different games, had 29 at-bats. He did have 4 runs, 3 hits, 1 double, 1 home run. So out of his 3 hits, 2 were extra base hits, 3 RBIs. He did get 6 walks, 1 hit by pitch, struck out 7 times. But he put up an average of 103, and then his slugging percentage was 241. That's not what you need. That's not going to get it by, especially at a growing, thriving program such as Clemson baseball. Not going to get it done. So, yeah, he's transferring out, and this is another one. At first glance, it feels like this hurts. At first glance, it's like, oh, another infielder, but this one doesn't bother us. So, Billy Barlow, Cooper Blauser, both of them are transferring out, and honestly, I think that's okay. I'm not upset about either of those. Our team is good. I'm more upset about their graduates graduating out, which we'll talk about on another episode. But overall, you're not upset about that. You're not too upset. You're not too worried about those transfers because at the end of the day, they didn't have a great season, and honestly, there's other players that are better. If Billy Barlow comes back, I don't think he's in the starting lineup. I don't think he's in the rotation. I think he's going to be a bullpen pitcher, which is not what he wants to do. So he's transferring out to go start. Cooper Blauser, he's probably not getting a lot of playing time next year. He's probably going to be a guy that just is there for injuries or pinch hit every once in a while or give a guy a rest day every once in a while. So I don't think he's going to get playing time, which is why he's transferring out, and he knows that as well. So overall, disappointing season for Clemson. A lot of excitement about the future for this program with Eric Bakich and where he's leading this team. So these transfers are not something I'm worried about at all, and I don't think you should be either. And so we're going to take a quick ad break again, and when we come back, we're going to highlight a different area of Clemson sports. We'll see you in a moment. Welcome back to the Locked On Clemson podcast. So we've talked about some football. Football, I think this year we've got a lot to be excited about. This is going to be a special year. I really think Clemson's going to get back to where they were as long as Cade can prove who he is. We talked about baseball. Season just ended, but there is so much to be excited about. I mean, who doesn't want to play with Eric Bakich? This team is special. Team 128 is going to make it to Omaha. I'll mark it down. I'm calling it right now. Next year's team is making it to Omaha. I'm excited about that. Now we want to do something we don't talk a lot about here on the podcast, but we want to talk about some professionals that are Clemson alumni. Yesterday, Thursday, January 13th, was a big day when it came down to Clemson professionals. And so we're going to talk about two different alumni that are special players. One, I'm sure every single one of you has heard of. One, unless you're just a deep Clemson fan, you might not have heard of her before. But we're going to dive into those. The first one is this. When I ask you who is the number one quarterback in Clemson football history, you get a couple different answers, but there's really only be like two or three names that really come up. And the top two would be Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. Well, yesterday, Trevor Lawrence joined Deshaun Watson as one of the top three paid quarterbacks in all of the NFL. The top three paid quarterbacks are Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, and Trevor Lawrence. So two of the three in the NFL right now are Clemson alumni. And yesterday, Trevor Lawrence agreed to an extension deal with the Jaguars for worth 5-year, $275 million with $142 million guaranteed. Joe Burrow's making a little bit more money. Deshaun Watson's making about the same. But Trevor Lawrence, based on a year-to-year salary basis, he is the top paid, yearly paid quarterback in the NFL, and he deserves it. There's a lot of things going on right now. A lot of people are talking about whether or not he deserves this and whether or not he should be getting this. Honestly, yes, he should. And here's the reason why. Yes, when you look at he was drafted in 2021, and honestly, he's really the only quarterback in that 2021 class that deserves an expansion. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance really haven't worked out for their teams. Both are on a different team than the one they were drafted by. Mac Jones, Justin Fields, you don't know what's going to happen, right? Mac shown glimpses. Justin Fields has definitely showed glimpses, but neither are really guaranteed to start this year. Justin Fields is behind Russell Wilson, who we all know could have another ACC quarterback. He is NC State. I don't care what Wisconsin says. But Russell Wilson, we all know, could be an excellent quarterback, could be booty. So we're going to see what happens. Neither Justin Fields or Mac Jones are going to be guaranteed to start. Trevor Lawrence is the only one that's really taken over and been who he is, and that's why he was drafted number one overall. But yeah, so Trevor Lawrence, he's had a rough 3 years. His first year, I don't count as a playing career. He played under Urban Meyer, who was... Yeah, he was something. So that freshman year, he only got 3 wins there, but honestly wasn't something to be too excited about. But then past 2 years, Trevor Lawrence has really been a better team for Jacksonville. He's led them to 17 wins in these first 2 years. And that might not sound impressive. That might not sound great, but Jaguars, before the 3 seasons before Trevor Lawrence, they'd won 12 games total, and they had 6 quarterbacks playing those games. They had Jake Luton, who didn't win a game. Mike Glennon, ACC quarterback from the Wolfpack, didn't win a game. Gardner Minshew, Nick Foles, Cody Kessler, and Blake Bortles. Those 6 quarterbacks appeared over a 3-year span, and they only won 12 games. Trevor Lawrence comes into play, and his 2 real careers, again, we're not counting his freshman year. In my opinion, he's entering into his 3rd season. But in his first 2 real seasons, he put up 17 wins, which is more than they had got the previous 3 years by almost. They got it one more than triple of it. So crazy. Lawrence's growth in his system, he really feels like he's about to have a breakout year. He's starting to click. He's starting to form. He's starting to get more connected with the team, be that leader, be engaging. All the reports are saying that all the players are looking to him as the leader of that team. Doug Peterson is a great coach. He led Eagles to a Super Bowl. He's playing with Jacksonville. I think they're really going to mesh together. Not to mention he has a great player beside him that he's very comfortable with Travis Etienne. So Trevor Lawrence is going to be a great player. He deserves that contract. So big day. Now 2/3 of the the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL are Clemson alumni, and yet no one else is talking about that. Why are we not? But exciting stuff. I'd love to see that. Trevor Lawrence deserves that money. Happy for him. Great guy on and off the field. The other big thing that happened for the pro day yesterday for Clemson sports was a girl by the name Mckenzie Clark. If you're a big Clemson fan, you've heard this name. She is a 4-year player for Clemson softball. Starter, plays excellent for the softball team. She is playing with Athletes Unlimited, which is a professional softball team. What they do is they play for about 2 weeks span, 18 games in the middle of the summer, and they bring in professional softball players to come and play in this tournament. She is the 5th Clemson softball player to go play in this type of league in Clemson softball history. And so excited that she got this opportunity. Yesterday, she hit her first career grand slam, and I mean, go watch the video. It was a bomb. She hit that joker out. She's thriving with Athletes Unlimited. She's doing excellent, doing really, really well. Just a reminder how special of a player that she was this year. This year for Clemson, she played in 54 games, 166 at bats. She pulled in 53 runs, 61 hits in that time, had a bunch of total bases. Overall, she hit a total of 10 home runs, and she's not known as a power hitter. She's more of that consistent, get on base, do what needs to be done, but has 10 home runs, 41 RBIs, and 29 walks. Overall at Clemson, she's batting .346, .443, and .633 slugging percentage. So she is doing really well. She was a special player at Clemson. So excited to see that. Excited to see her hit that bomb yesterday. First career grand slam in the professional world. Love to see it. So big day yesterday for some Clemson alumni, and that's what makes Clemson sports special. Clemson is a great college athletic or academics. They're a great college culturally and safety. They're a great college town, but they're also thriving athletes. I want you to hear this. We're going to talk about more of this in a Nets episode. We're going to kick off the Nets week with this episode. But Clemson this year athletically had an amazing year. Football, success in the Gator Bowl. Even on a down year, went 9-4. Soccer, champions. Women's soccer made far. Basketball made it far. Gymnastics made it. Baseball did well. Softball did well. Women's golf did well. Men's golf did well. Success all across the board. So we're going to talk about that more of that Monday next week. But that's exciting. Clemson's in a great spot, and we're so happy for our alumni. We're happy anytime anybody does well. Not even to mention all the players that were drafted with the first-round draft pick with Nate Wiggins and so many more playing. So we love to see Clemson success. We don't stop pulling for them once they get out of college, once they leave Clemson, unless they transfer, right? Unless that happens. But anyway, with all that being said, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Clemson podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. Like we said, Monday, we're going to kick off and just highlight what an amazing year it's been for Clemson athletics. Hey, let us know your thoughts on today's topics. Let us know what you think about it. Drop a comment on YouTube. Reach out to us over on X. We'd love to hear anything you have to say. If you haven't, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast. We are on the journey to 900 subscribers. We are 8 away. Help us get to that 900 subscriber mark. And make sure when you do subscribe, that lets you, every day, this can be your first listen here on the Locked On Clemson podcast. We can't wait to see you on tomorrow's episode or Monday's episode. But until then, keep that Tiger pride alive and roaring. And as always, go Tigers.